Something about the Colonial Pipeline story doesn't really add up. I'm Chris, and this is Patriot Party News.
Good evening. Tonight, federal authorities are investigating a major cyber attack targeting America's energy infrastructure. Georgia-based Colonial Pipeline says it was hit by ransomware.
For 15 years, I worked in the industrial controls field. I design systems for industrial control networks. I implement those systems. I do programming for PLCs. I develop the top end, which was what we call an HMI, a human to machine interface. So I've been following the Colonial Pipeline story very closely. At first, I read it, and I kind of understood what was going on. But as time went on, I found myself questioning how we could be getting the entire story. So we have to go back to last Friday. So on last Friday, Colonial Pipeline identifies a threat in their network, and they determine that it's ransomware, and then they start farming out the repair process to a third party. And while they did that, they shut down their entire pipeline operations. This is extraordinary. You never, ever want to shut down your operations, especially if that shutdown is going to cost you a ton of money. So you do everything that you can to avoid that. So that I started to pay closer attention to it. I reached out to Colonial Pipeline and I asked them why their networks weren't protected, where the ransomware attack happened, how many operation centers they had, and a list of other questions. And they didn't really respond. They sent me a canned response that said, "Hey, Chris, very nice to hear from you. Here's a link to our media inquiries page, and we'll keep you on our media list so that in the future you have updates." Which I understand why they didn't answer any of their questions, so I had to dig in on my own. I found that Colonial Pipeline has been looking for a cybersecurity manager for a while. They have job postings on LinkedIn and they have job postings on their website, and it's been active for over 30 days. They are also looking for SCADA managers. So what SCADA is, it's supervisory control and data acquisition. Now we're going to come back to that in a minute. They're also looking for PLC technicians with Allen Bradley experience and iFix HMI experience. So I assume that they use Allen Bradley PLCs and the iFix HMI. But let's talk about how these networks are supposed to be designed. When you build an industrial control network, you want it to be its own island. It needs to be protected from external threats and protected from internal threats because these are critical for infrastructure and for sustaining life in the United States. So what you do is you build servers, you put the software on these servers, and then you protect the servers. You make sure that they're physically isolated and that they're locked up. You make sure that the USB ports on them don't work and that anyone that needs to access that stuff has the special permissions to do it. You make sure that all of your data that's transmitted from the server out into the field is encrypted. You can do that using cellular modems, VPN tunnels. You can use licensed radios that shoot microwave, and there's a lot of ways to do it. But the cybersecurity is critical. Homeland Security offers training to all these people. You can come out and have your network penetrated, so I don't understand how we ended up in this situation. Now, one thing you for sure don't want to do, but unfortunately some people do it, is connect your other networks with your SCADA network. Now, there's a million reasons why they do it, and it's usually because there's some kind of software on their admin side that can get data from the control side and create business intelligence dashboards and nice charts and graphs that the upper management likes to see. And then sometimes the systems are hooked up to the internet because they want remote access into those systems for technicians and things that are working at home, and they want to be able to monitor it. But when those are done, that should be heavily encrypted. You should be using VPN tunneling and cloud-based services that are protected. There's Aviva, they offer cloud-based operations, and you can load your control system up into the cloud, but then that's protected. So I'm wondering if we didn't get here because everyone was working from home. They had people that were tunneling into their network that weren't protecting their home computers or their laptops. But one thing's for certain is we're not getting the entire story. So the media is reporting that there was a ransomware attack on their admin side, and they were concerned about it, so they shut down all of their operations on the control side. But this is going to cost them a fortune, so I don't understand how that can be the case. So this makes me think that the issue is on their control side. That it actually infected some of their servers and their server hardware and some workstations on the control side, and they had to shut it down so that they could get fresh copies of all this stuff and get it rebuilt. That's the only thing that makes sense. So the question becomes, why are they lying about it? Then the other question is if it is on the control side, how did that happen? There are people all over the East Coast now that are running out of gasoline. They don't have the ability to go to other gas stations to get the gasoline because they're all out. So this is having a big impact on not just the East Coast, but it's going to have ramifications throughout the entire country as our prices go up. And I find myself very frustrated. Now, the Biden administration has said that they're going to relax some guidelines and that we should be hearing some good news by tomorrow. But this is just another example of how delicate our infrastructure is, and that the people that are running this don't really understand cybersecurity. We've given many trainings at my job for people so that they understand that you have to build your entire culture around cybersecurity, or else there's going to be slip-ups. Things are going to happen. People are going to answer the wrong email, or they're going to find a USB drive sitting on the floor and they're just going to stick it in. But we need to be very careful. And what really this shows us is that it can take something small and stupid to really affect us. It may be helpful for me to give you guys a little bit of background on how automation works. So, in industrial automation, usually, but not always, you have something called a PLC, which stands for Programmable Logic Controller. The PLC is a small computer that has a very high uptime. They last for a really long time. And what it does is it allows you to write code into the controller that responds to conditions in the field. So if you have a tank, for instance, a gasoline tank, and you want to fill it, there's gauges on the tank that tell you what level the tank is at. And as the tank draws down, that gauge will send a signal to the PLC, and the PLC will say, okay, we need to turn on a pump and we need to fill that tank back up. This is done using I/O cards, right? I/O stands for inputs and outputs, and they come in a couple different kinds. The two main kinds are digital inputs, digital outputs, analog inputs, and analog outputs. And the difference between the two is that a digital stands for on or off. So something is like this motor is running or this motor has failed. Those are going to be your digital inputs. Your analog inputs are going to be stuff like pressure gauges, temperature transmitters, and they let you know a numerical value of what's going on in the field. And then your analog outputs are going to be things like how fast the motor should run on a pump. So all of those different components go together and they become part of the larger SCADA system. The SCADA system is used by the operator he monitors the devices in the field, and then he or she is making decisions on what is going on in the field and how to best operate the facility. So if they want to start flowing gas to one location, they will open the correct valves, turn on the right number of pumps, and then they'll monitor for pressure and temperature and stuff, just to make sure that there's no leaks, there's no fire. The system is pretty complicated. It probably consists of hundreds and hundreds of devices. Online, I see a lot of people talking about why don't they just run the system in manual? And I'm going to tell you why, and it's pretty simple. After decades of automation, these facilities have less and less people. And unfortunately, when you have 5,000 miles of pipe, you can't run it manually anymore because there's so many gauges, such as temperature and pressure, that you have to monitor at all times. And if you don't monitor them and you have a high pressure buildup, or you have some high temperatures, you could have fires, you could have massive leaks. There's a huge liability for them there. So there's no real conspiracy on why they're not running it in manual. I would be shocked if they were actually capable of doing that when smaller places have lost all of their technical ability and they can't run it in manual. So the idea that 5,000 long run of pipe, you got to give them some grace there, but still it's shocking to me what's happened. So what are you doing to prepare? I tell people all the time, you should never have your gas tank less than half full because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know when there's going to be a run on gas, and you don't know how that's going to affect everything else. Think about this. If they can't get gas, they can't run trucks. And if they can't run trucks, they can't fill the grocery stores up. Our system is very interconnected, and that's why it's very important for us to protect everything. What have you done to make sure that you're safe and secure and ready to go? All right, everybody. I'm Chris. This was Patriot Party News. Please do me a favor. Subscribe to us on Gab, gab.com/PatriotPartyNews, and on whatever video platform you're watching this on. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks.